You want to sew the inner seam or the inseam of each pant leg first. And that's basically going to be the seam that runs along the inside of your leg. So kind of from the crotch down to the inner ankle. So make sure on this one that you're not matching a back to a back piece or a front to a front piece. So you'll be matching one back pant pattern to one front pant pattern. And you'll be doing that twice because you have two pieces and two legs. I've opened up the seam after I've stitched it to make sure that I'm pressing this nice and flat. I'm going to start from the inside to make sure I don't accidentally burn the fabric for whatever reason. You can see the silk is actually turning a slightly different color under the heat. And then of course I'll do the outside. Make sure that it's really nice and crisp on both sides. I've labeled your front and back here so you can see how I've clearly sewn a front and a back pant piece together, and now I'm matching them up at the crotch. So I start off by measuring that inseam where I've folded out and pressed, and I match that on both sides first and pin that so that way it lines up. Then I'll pin the rest of the curved crotch seam just like I'm doing now. Make sure that as you're pinning these edges together that you're keeping them nice and lined up, and that you're really making sure the edges line up as well. The notches will help you make sure that you're on track with your pinning. pinned, you can easily follow the curve of the crotch seam that I've pinned in here. You can see there's a front and a back, so that's what we're going to be sewing. Once I'm done sewing this, it's important to trim down where the crotch actually meets. Most of this is just so you don't have as much bulk right at your crotch, because that's never comfortable. So I'm just going to trim this seam allowance down to about 1/4 inch. Notice that I'm not starting right at the waist. I'm just evening it out a little bit when we get closer to the crotch. So I'm starting probably about 4 or 5 inches away from the crotch seam and just trimming from there. As you get ready to pin your side seams down, before you start stitching, make sure you line up that notch first, and then you begin to pin. This will just ensure that you don't have mismatched side seams. That can also create a lot of random wrinkling and pulling in the fabric. You'll notice that at my hems, one seems to be longer than the other. So what I did was I actually matched the ends and then kind of eased the fabric back and adjusted and shifted to make it fit. Make sure to place the ironing board through the pant leg so that way you're only ironing one layer at a time. When I get towards the end of my pant, I do run out of room, or it's not as wide as my ironing board, so I did end up having to take it off and just sort of gently press it on top of the other side. Just be careful that when you do that, you're not ironing a crease into the front or the back of the pant leg. Notice I'm just ironing in the center and not all the way towards the sides. And finally, you can see that both of my legs are now sewn on the inseam as well as the side seams and in the crotch seam. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn my pants inside out. And it looks like I've got a really, really long upper half of the pant. This will give you plenty of room to fold over and insert that elastic waistband, which will be our next step.